Hey guys, stick around. We have a really fascinating and in-depth conversation with Sean Dowdell. Now, this is Sean's second time on the podcast. He's once again promoting music with his band Grey Daze that features Chester Bennington from Linkin Park with vocals that he recorded before he passed away. And the new music is amazing. And the discussion goes very deep. We talk about the new music, Chester, band relationships, business and politics, and a lot more. So, warning, we will discuss suicide and mental health in this episode. If you or someone you know is suffering, please reach out for help. I've put a mental health resource in the show notes. Now here's the interview with Sean Dowdell. All right, Sean, how's it going, man? Long time no talk.
Oh, it's going really well. Thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, so new album, The Phoenix, comes out June 17th, so we got 2 more weeks?
I think it's been postponed to July 1st because of some manufacturing issues the label's having with the physical copies.
Oh, okay. Well, there's a couple songs I think that are on Spotify now, right?
Yeah, our first 2 singles, we have Saturation, Strange Love, and Starting to Fly that are out right now.
Which are the first 2 songs when they get the album, which I think are like, those are 2 of the best songs on the album.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, because the first one, they both just kind of kick off. Like, it's just like you hear his screaming, Chester screaming. I mean, that's like, it's so iconic. I mean, it's really cool that we're still being able to hear new stuff from him.
Thanks. Yeah. It was an honor to work on the project, and we're all very excited. And of course we love the music. So listening to Chester is always fun.
Yeah. And then the one song, Holding You's got Dave Navarro from Jane's Addiction doing an awesome guitar solo. And then there's also, I think you have Richard Patrick from Filter doing a song too.
Yeah, he sings on a song called Believe Me.
Yeah. Are those the only 2 guests?
Chester's daughters, Lily and Lila, both sing on a song called Whole.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And that wraps up all the guests. Just the 3 songs we had guests on.
Okay. So I'm curious, like, cause you were pretty big back in the day, Grey Daze in Phoenix. So is there people that, were like old fans from the 90s that now are enjoying this music and going, oh, this is so great to hear all this stuff again?
Oh yeah. It's really cool. We get a lot of the fans that'll send us photos of them at the shows back in the day. And, to people that have always still loved the music, and, the demos have kind of been leaked out a little bit. They were taken off the market back in the early 2000s by Warner Brothers, but true fans have gone out and sought those things out and found them, and they love the new, or at least the majority of the people love the new renditions of the songs, the rewritings of everything.
Yeah. What has really changed though? I mean, besides, you obviously have a couple guests and stuff, and you've maybe remixed it, or?
No, it's honestly, it's changed 100%. We literally took away all the old music and threw it away, and just kept Chester's vocal tracks, and then worked on rearranging some of the vocal tracks, writing new parts with some of the guests, and then wrote the song musically around Chester's voice from scratch. Literally, there's nothing the same at all from the original demos, except for Chester's vocal parts.
Oh, okay. I didn't know it was that much different. I thought you kept some of the...
No, so back on the first album, Amends, there's a couple songs, Sometimes, What's in the Eye, that stayed pretty close to the original, but everything else was dramatically changed. And this album, we didn't keep anything. We literally started from scratch and just worked around Chester's vocals. And even his vocals, we used different parts from different songs, rearranged some of the stuff, wrote new choruses. I mean, there's a lot of, it does not sound anything like the originals. Okay.
So you redid all your drum parts?
Everything. We guitars, bass, not only drum parts, but rewrote drums completely. Started from a complete neutral position and reimagined everything and tried to write a song in a more modern context that would make sense and be more relevant in today's music world.
Yeah, no, it definitely sounds totally relevant and new, and the production is stellar. I mean, it doesn't sound like a demo at all, which is amazing that his vocals could, because I mean, those are the one thing that's original. It doesn't sound like a demo of a vocal. It sounds like he's given it his all, like it's fully production, brand new.
That's how good he was. A lot of people don't realize that he really was hitting on all cylinders back when we were doing this. And we recorded 3 full records together. We had a couple record deals. It's not like we were just in a garage, demoing stuff. We actually went to real studios and did real recordings. We didn't have the production value back in the 90s, and I think that's why we decided to rewrite the music side of it. But his vocal performances were so good that we're like, we can absolutely work with this.
Yeah. I didn't know. And then there is a cover on there, right? Anything. That's the Dramarama song. I love that song. Yeah,
it's a great song. And it was one of our repertoire standards for many years. And that was a favorite of Chester's. And I think it's very difficult to do a cover song justice. And I think his vocal performance is just awesome on that track. So
yeah, it's definitely like a different spin on it, because I feel like the original, obviously it's more poppy and stuff, and he kind of took it like a little darker.
Yeah, it's a desperate song when he sings it.
Yeah, you can feel
that's the emotional context I put it in, is when you hear him, talking about he's trying to make his girlfriend happy, even though these aren't his lyrics. That's the cool thing about Chester. One of the talents he had was he could take someone else's lyrics and still believe it as he was singing it. You know what I mean? He wasn't phoning it in or just trying to replicate what somebody else was doing. He made it his own. And that's why I think that song is special, is because he really did. We made that song our own.
Yeah, no, definitely. The whole album is just filled with emotion. I mean, you can feel it when he screams. It's not like he's, just playing and like using his voice as an instrument. It's like he's like belting out these emotions. It's like, and you're like feeling like, wow, this is, I'm feeling your pain, buddy. Like, it must have been cathartic for him to sing.
I think it was certainly an outlet for him to get his emotional goo out. You know what I mean? He had a lot of stuff going on internally, and I think, for many years that was the one thing that he could do to exercise those demons and get that pain out of his system. And you're right, Chester had an ability to make you as the listener understand exactly what emotion he was going through, not just talking about, but what he was going through as that stuff was coming out of it. And that's a very rare gift. Very, very few singers are able to do that.
Well, how do you suggest people listen to this album? Like, do you think it's something that, because I feel like you could listen to it you could listen to it while you're driving. You could listen to it. It's definitely good workout music because it's going to push you. Or you could I was like listen to it in the shower, just like you almost want to like focus on the music and just sit and listen to it.
Thanks. So first I would say turn it up loud.
Yes.
It's a very powerful, loud album. So that would be my first suggestion. However that means, if that means if you're listening on headphones while you're running or working out. But I think you're right. I mean, this album is a little different than Amends. Amends was a bit of an emotional roller coaster, a lot of sadness, melancholy, reflectiveness. This album sounds like you want to raise your fist and scream along with Chester. And I think that's the differentiation between the two. For me, I'm a car listener or I'm a runner listener. So I'll put in my ears and run and blast it, or I'll blast in my car on my drive. That's how I like to listen to music.
Yeah, no, that's all. You know what else I noticed too is that some of these songs like Drag, that's got a really dark, like spooky vibe in the opening. Could some of these songs be placed in music movies and TV and things like commercials, things like that? Because I feel like they're definitely going to bring a mood to things.
I would hope so. I think there's some great songs that definitely lend themselves to that. I Starting to Fly when we're all rocking How High Would You Go? I mean, that to me sounds like an extreme sports or NBA theme or something like that. Or Drag is very dark. I could see that in some kind of Michael Bay movie or something, but you never know. I mean, that's us as dreamers, which, we all are dreamers. We like to think of the music living outside of just the album itself. And when you can land syncs in movies or commercials or Netflix, the music gets to have a life elsewhere other than just radio and Spotify and iTunes, and that to me, if we can land some of that stuff, would be great.
Yeah, because I think sometimes that makes the song. Like, there's so many songs that I think of that are attached to movies or TV or commercials or whatever that it's hard to think of those things without that in it.
The one that comes to mind right off the bat is every time I hear a couple of Creedence Clearwater Revival songs, I think of Forrest Gump. No matter where I'm at, what I'm doing, you hear John Fogerty blasting out,
Oh yeah. No, that's funny.
And you're like, Forrest Gump, I can't get away from that.
Those songs are in so many things. I had the drummer of Creedence on here, and he was saying, because there was a little bit of an argument between John Fogerty and the drummer, because the drummer's like, yeah, put these songs everywhere, because, he wants a check. And then John Fogerty was more like picky about stuff. But yeah, those songs are in a lot of things, but definitely Forrest Gump's a big one.
I think people miss the point. It's not about trying to cash a check, because I'll put my song in a movie for free, because like I just said, I'm not out buying Creedence Clearwater Revival albums, but I do watch Forrest Gump. And now I know that song, and I'm just using this as an example. You have a lot of young people today that music's not everywhere like it used to be. You have to go and find it. And if you don't know what you're looking for, you're missing out on some great stuff. So therefore, if you can find another avenue to get your music introduced to people through a different medium, that's the important part. Maybe in John's case, he's a little bit more protective because it was about the check or whatever for the drummer. I'm not sure what context they're bringing that up, but to me, you're giving potential listeners a different medium and access to your music that they normally wouldn't find you in,
Right. No, definitely.
To me, that's the important part.
It's definitely a different game now. Like it's hard to sell records. I know like Grey Daze has millions of streams, but even I'm sure that's not bringing in a lot of money and whatnot. And I mean, I guess some exposure, but.
Yeah. So, we've had a couple people that are like, oh, you're just trying to get rich off this. And that always hurts our feelings. Even though I've learned to brush that stuff off and just say, you guys are idiots, because you do the math, you do 100 million streams, 100 million streams. Sounds like a lot, right?
Yeah.
You're talking about $330,000, something in that vein. And then your label takes half of that. So you're left with what? $165,000, something like that. And then you take the $165,000 and you get taxed on that. So you chop that in half. Okay. Yeah. So you're roughly left with, let's say, $90,000. Then you get to divide that by 5 or 6 people. And then your producer. So you're left with nothing. You're talking about $20,000, $30,000 for 100 million streams per person. It is a waste of time financially for me to do this.
No, that's
not why I'm doing it. I'm losing
because you got the tattoo stuff. Obviously, that's your moneymaker. But this is more just to get the songs out.
This is a passion project for us. This is very important. This is a very dear friend of mine. Our band was a friendship between guys that really loved hanging out together and had a great time in every aspect of life, not just musically. So this was something that I have spent more money on than made, and I'm fine with that, by the way. I don't care. I'm not chasing this for money. I'm chasing this because I want it to be good. I want it to be great. I want people to understand what it is, and I want them to see Chester in a light that maybe they haven't seen him before and appreciate him differently. That's why we're doing this. And anybody that can do math can simply go through what I just said and come to the same conclusion of we're telling the truth. Like that's what it is. And even if let's even say we did 1 billion streams. So we just add a 0 to the end of that. So now instead of 30,000, we have 300,000. 300,000 might change a lot of people's life, but it's not going to change mine at all. And that I'm not meaning that to sound arrogant. I'm just trying to put it in context for everybody. And we're at 1/10 of that. So it's an irrelevant conversation for me when people try to say that. And so we just try to focus on the positive side of stuff. We worked our asses off to make this music great. SJ, the producer, did a great job. I think musically, this is a very strong record. And I think there's some great singles on here, but I think as a record, you're going to listen to the whole thing in its entirety and hopefully be floored by it.
No, yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, the emotion, you feel it. That's why I feel like people need to, at least the first time they listen, maybe just sit down and really listen to it. I kind of want to read the lyrics too, because that's one thing I didn't do is look at all the lyrics, because I'm sure the lyrics are very dark and heavy too.
They can be. This album actually, so the last album was very dark and very sad. And this album has a little bit more hope and positivity to it. When we're talking about starting to fly, you're talking about a young person who's coming into their own. and starting to really understand that the world is their oyster and that they can go and do and accomplish anything they want. Like, how high can we go? Where can we get to? So that's a great message. Drag is another one. He was dark and moody as drag is. The overall underlying message of that song is life is too short to be a drag. Figure it out. Get away from those demons. Life's too short to be intoxicated. Get away from that stuff and figure out what makes you happy and chase that. And that is what I think embodies the entire record, is that message, you know?
Mm-hmm. No, for sure. The last song too is really interesting. Wake Me. It's kind of a slowed down, but it's the vocals for me on that one. It's like very distinct. I don't know how to describe it. Like almost kind of spread out. It reminded me of like Pearl Jam. Is that, you're hearing that too? Like the Eddie Vedder kind of.
For sure. Yeah. And there's another one on the record. So I'll address this one real quick. So when we wrote Wake Me, that would have been a very probably heavily influenced by Pearl Jam. But there's another track that I think you can absolutely hear it on even more. It's called Be Your Man. It's the third track on the record. Mm-hmm. And to me, we were really hoping we could get Eddie to actually sing on one of those songs, but it just didn't happen. I couldn't get in touch with him. And I think that you can really hear the Pearl Jam influence off the 10 record in that song. I think it's a great song.
Is that one going to be a future single?
No, Drag is going to be the next single.
Okay.
And then I think we're going to release Holding You or Believe Me after that.
Yeah. Are these songs, I didn't even see, the last album, were they on the radio? I mean, I don't even know if that means anything, but because they're getting millions of streams, so it doesn't really matter if they're.
Yeah, so the last record, I believe we had 4 singles that reached Billboard Top 25. We had one that went all the way to number 2.
Wow.
I believe Sometimes, What's in the Eye, B12, all ranked near the 20 mark on Billboard, and then Sickness went to number 2 on Billboard. So yeah, we had a lot of radio play.
Nice. That does help. I mean, I feel like the playlists are like more important, but I guess the bands tell me you need both. Like to get exposure, you need and also the movie TV. You need all 3, it seems like, or all 3 can definitely help.
Well, that's the label's job. There's nothing we can do about that.
Right.
So, if we're getting the radio play, then the label deserves the credit. If we're not, then they deserve the blame. It's one of those things. The band did the job on producing and getting the music to the finish line, and the rest is up to the label. And if they do their job, then we should see the music everywhere. And if they don't, then we won't.
Yeah.
But for us, the most important thing was getting the music done.
Yeah, for sure. So what about, you mentioned that Chester did an album with STP. Is that ever going to see the light of day?
I made one comment in an interview, and it seems to be every interview I do since then gets brought up. I don't know. I'm Dean and Robert are really nice guys, but I'm not super close friends with those guys. So I don't know if I don't know if it's ever going to see the light of day, because they have the new singer Jeff, and it would kind of be weird for them to put out a record with Chester while they had Jeff. I don't know. You'd have to ask those guys, but I've heard it. I was around while he was doing it, and it's really good.
Yeah, I can imagine. That's what I'd want to hear that. Like, I wonder if they would just put it out there. I've seen bands do that before. Like, remember when Kiss, when they got they got Peter and Ace back in the band in the 90s, and they had already done an album with the other guys. And then I think they just put that other album out and didn't really promote it or anything, but just put it out so people could check it out.
Yeah. I don't know. It was called Psycho Circus. If I'm not, I could be incorrect. I was a big Kiss fan.
I think that's the one with Peter and Ace, but there was another one before that with Bruce and the other drummer. I forget.
Eric Singer.
Yeah. I think that they had already done that, and then they got back with this big reunion. They put out Psycho Circus, and then they I think they put that other album out with Bruce and Eric where they just kind of like released it but didn't promote it or anything. And so, but it was really good too. There was like one single off it that I really liked it.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. Kiss is a very weird dynamic, because you had Peter and Ace that were in the band for, what was it, 6 or 7 years? It wasn't as long, maybe 7 years, something like that. And then they had this extended career basically from like 1979 to 1999. Well, so almost 20 years without those guys. And then the fans keep wanting them back for nostalgia's sake. But I think some of their best work was done after those guys left the band, and it sounds like those guys were so hard to deal with for Gene and Paul. I've listened to both Gene and Paul's books and followed the band for many, many years. It's an interesting dynamic because they've got all this pressure from the fan base that wants that original lineup. Yeah, they've gone on to be very successful without those guys. And then when they get them back in the band, it seems like those guys are always causing issues and problems and bitching about money. And, meanwhile, they're broke, but Gene and Paul are paying them lots of money. I don't know them personally. Yeah. So, of course, I'm speculating and only hearing,
right.
the story, but it's a very interesting dynamic to me. Like, those guys, when they were brought back, they should have been doing everything they could to try to keep it together. And
like they should be kissing their ass for letting them back in the band. Like, hey, I'll do whatever you want. I'll take less money. Just to be a part of that would be huge, I would think.
Yeah, and I don't think Gene and Paul wanted them to kiss their ass, but I think they wanted them to be appreciative of the situational circumstance they found themselves in. And instead they were spiteful and pissed off that they weren't getting as much. It's like, these guys have gone on for almost 20 years without you and done quite well. And that opening, maybe there's some animosity and stuff like that we're not understanding, but at the same time, those guys at the end of the day, let the guys, those longtime warriors that had been with them go in order to put these two original pieces back in the band. And I think that gets lost in translation with Peter and Ace, where they just kind of complained. And, the stuff that I've read and seen, it seems very unappreciative and short-sighted on those guys' parts. And it's unfortunate.
Yeah, it's because it's interesting. Yeah, they kicked him out, then they brought him back, and then it was like it didn't last very long the second time. So whatever the problems were didn't seem to be solved. And maybe it's just personality conflicts. I don't know. But I mean, even like reading your book, you could tell that there's a lot of issues when you have a band and trying to get 4 people or 5 or whatever it is, personalities to all work together. I mean, that's a tough thing.
Yeah, and then you start to add. So a lot of people don't realize too that most of the musicians, when they're young and starting out, they're not as experienced, they're not as educated, they're not as emotionally in touch. It's why the musicians and creatives in the first place. And then you introduce money, and then everything that makes your band successful in the beginning usually gets taken away after you hit the success mark. All the time you spent together as a band creating your first big record, the guys at Guns N' Roses, the first big record they did, those guys spent years together in a rehearsal studio and writing, and every single day they were punching the world in the gut together, doing it as a team. All of a sudden you sell 20 million records or whatever it is. And this is no dig on those guys. I love Guns N' Roses, but I mean, I'm just talking about the dynamics that shift when you go from being hungry and starving musicians to when you become very successful. All of a sudden, everybody wants their own space. Nobody wants to rehearse. We're going to go in and write an album in a couple of months. Like, well, you guys took 8 years to write your first record. You're going to try to come out with your second record and, write it in 2 or 3 months. That's a difficult ask for anybody. And I think the general public doesn't understand that. Like, well, why are most people's second records not as good as their first? There's a few exceptions, but most of the time it's because not nearly enough time went into writing that second record. You've got pressure from the label, you got budgets, and all these things are worked into the thought process of creating that second record. And the first record took years, and you pull from everything great that you had, that you've done over 8 or 9 or 10 years to put into that one first record. Then you knock it out of the park, and then 6 months after you're off tour, the label's like, okay, do it again. You're like, fuck, how do I do this?
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I always feel like a lot of the band's first albums are the best. Like you talk about Guns N' Roses, Pearl Jam. I mean, as they've made so much music and a lot of it's good, and there's a lot of good songs that I like, but I don't think anything can capture that first the energy of the first album.
Yeah, I would agree that 10. So 10 is on my top 10 favorite albums of all time. So is Appetite for Destruction. There's a few bands in their first records hit that for me, but then you've got other bands like, I don't know, like Prince, where to me, Purple Rain is a masterpiece, right? That wasn't his first record, but he just he was brilliant. But he was in his own studio writing for a year before he put out anything. Yeah. That's the difference to me is how much time, there's the 10,000 hour theory. Like if you put 10,000 hours into anything, you can become a master at it. And that includes music. You know, I'm not talking about just playing drums for 10,000 hours. Okay, I play drums for 10,000 hours. I'm really good at playing drums. Great. Now writing songs. I put 10,000 hours into writing songs. Now I'm a good songwriter. On the next record, if I don't put in that same amount of time, it's going to come up short. And a lot of people, you know, labels don't realize how hard it is for the most part to write great material. It takes time. It's not just, let's put you in a great studio with a great producer. Sometimes that works, but you know, another great band that I'll talk about, you know, that became better over time instead of their first record was Red Hot Chili Peppers. That to me is a great example of a band that was able to write extensively outside of their touring cycle and came up, you know, that Blood Sugar Sex Magic album is one of my all-time favorites. Those guys are huge influences. Do I think Mother's Milk is a good album? Yeah, but I don't think it touches some of their later stuff because they've just developed and matured as writers in a way that most musicians don't, you know, because they still hang out together. They go in and write together. They're constantly writing, you know?
Yeah, and you're right, because they actually matured, because I don't think people know, like if you listen to their early stuff, I mean, they were like a punk band. Yeah. They were not the stuff that you hear on adult contemporary right now. They were not writing that stuff, but it works. Like, I think it's, I mean, for me, I kind of like that the Blood Sugar Sex Magic album. Like you said, I think that's brilliant.
Yeah. And Californication. I mean, so I love everything from Blood Sugar Sex Magic on. I'm a fan of One Hot Minute. I really like California.
Is that the one with Dave Navarro?
Yeah. Yeah.
I like that album too. It's kind of underrated.
Yeah. You know, I think there was and I don't know, I've never asked Dave this question. There must've been a weird dynamic in the band. Maybe they just didn't get along. I don't know, but I thought he actually wrote some cool stuff on that record. And I think I think the public sees Dave as a guitar god, but I don't think they understand how good of a songwriter he is. He's a really good writer. You know, that Jane's Addiction stuff, I think the stuff he did with those guys is great. And I love what he did on our track, Holding You. He doesn't just play the guitar solo. He actually plays guitar over the whole thing with Kristen. He's good, man. He's underrated. You know, another band that I think got better over time because of the way they wrote was Soundgarden was another one that, you know, those first few albums were okay. They were, you know, you could see talent there, but I thought Soundgarden got a lot better over time. You know, once you hit Bad Motorfinger.
I love that record. Yeah, I didn't like the Super Unknown though as much. I know that it was a little poppier, but I liked the more heavier grit of Bad Motorfinger. Yeah,
Jesus Christ Pose as a drummer is one of those songs that I always love to groove out to and throw down with. But, you know, everyone's got their own preference. But I think as writers, they became a lot stronger and a lot better over time. You know, even look at some of the metal bands or pop glam bands like Motley Crue. I think Motley Crue hit their stride on Girls, Girls, Girls. You know, Theater of Pain was cool. You know, I mean, it was like, wow, this is really different, right? But I thought, well, you know, once they came into Girls, 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 then to me, that's that. But I guess, you know, the other thing about music that doesn't get talked about is music really is the soundtrack to your life. So you can listen to an album that like Pearl Jam 10, I know right where I was, what time period I was in, what I was doing with my life, because it's a timestamp on my life. It's literally the soundtrack to my life. Oh, that's right in 1992, 1991 when I was in college. And I was just getting into the grunge scene, blah, 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 92, 93, whatever it was. And you just go to that place in your head. And I think that's also the emotional context that you find yourself in is really the importance you're also going to find with what record in their repertoire you resonate with.
No, absolutely. That's so right. Like, it's just like we were talking earlier with like certain songs, if they're in a movie, it's like, there's always going to be some memory usually when a song comes on first time you heard it, like when you heard it, or if it's in a movie or wherever, and that'll just always stick to it for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I you know, listen to Daft Punk and I hear that, I hear some of the Daft Punk stuff and I instantly think of Tron, you know, like I said, the Creedence stuff we talked about. I'm trying to think of another song that pops out into a movie. You know, one of Chester's song, you hear What I've Done from Linkin Park, you think of the Transformers movie. So
yeah. Well, you mentioned Soundgarden. Chris Cornell and Chester, they had a friendship, right? Wasn't he like Chester's godparent or something like that?
Yeah, they were friends. I believe Chester was Chris's godparent. I think it's the other way around.
I had it backwards. Okay.
I think. I honestly, don't quote me on that because I could be wrong. But yeah, they were friends, and they didn't hang out all the time or anything like that. But they really enjoyed each other's company and lived in the same similar areas.
It's just so sad. Like they both just took these dark paths. You'd think that they would have been able to talk about those feelings that they were having with each other because they would both had the same kind of feelings, sort of.
You know, I don't know Chris. I've only met his wife. I think two or three times. She seems very nice. I don't know Chris, so I don't know the demons he was dealing with. Knowing Chester as much as I do, I can tell you that these are not stuff they like to talk about. There's a certain amount of shame that comes along with those feelings, and it's not usually a comfortable place for them to go. So Chester became very good. He became a master at hiding those feelings to the public. You always saw him with a smile. He was one of the most joking human beings I knew. And I spoke to him 2 days before he passed, and he was on top of the world. I mean, there were things that we were just laughing, and we could not wait. We were supposed to have dinner that Saturday night together and start rehearsing for our show, our reunion show that was coming up. So I would think he'd be able to talk to me. I was one of his best friends in the world. And he didn't tell me that was the feelings he was having. So I think depression's a weird thing, man. You know, it makes
because you called him out on, didn't your wife like kind of pick up on something? Like she was like, you need to talk to him, and you tried, and then he denied it.
Yeah. So when they did the One More Light album, he started wearing this hat. It was a very specific hat he started wearing in a lot of their photo shoots and press. And my wife, Dora, she's like, something's not right with him. And I go, well, what do you mean? She goes, I don't know. There's just something in his eyes. Something's not right. And I'm like, no, he's trying to change his look up a little bit. That's what he's doing. You know, I'm the forever optimist. Right. And she goes, no, you need to say something to him. Something's not right. So when we talked on the phone, I'm like, you okay? And then he opened up a little bit. He told me that, you know, some of the negativity surrounding the album was really hurting his feelings. He's like, I've never been attacked like this, you know, from our fans. He's like, it's very hurtful. It sucks. And we try to do something different. We try to do something cool. And it was very hurtful. And you look at the comment, you go back into their YouTube stuff, because after he passed, I went down the rabbit hole to find out what I was missing here. And you see some bad comments. There's always a keyboard warriors that talk shit online. And, you know, they're supposedly his fans, but yet they're running their mouth about how much this sucks or whatever. But it's really interesting because you've got 10,000 awesome comments, 10,000 that are, I love this song. I love this album, blah, blah, blah. You guys are so great. And then you'll have 100 assholes telling you how much it sucks. And his mind would focus in on the assholes, the 1 or 2% of people that didn't like what he was doing, that felt tough behind the keyboard. And he couldn't get out of that. Like, that's where his mind took him. And he just felt like a failure because of that, because of the people talking shit, rather than the 10,000 people that are telling him how great it is and how much it impacted their life and what their music means to them. And I think that's something that his mindset did to him a lot. It made him, first of all, I think he came from a place where he didn't feel good enough about himself. You know, he cared so much about everybody else, and he loved everybody and was truly compassionate and had the biggest heart. And he wanted, you know, he would talk to complete strangers for 2 hours at a time, and everybody loved him. You ask a room full of people that like music, and you say, who here knows Chester Bennington? Who here loves Chester? And everyone raises their hands. And the only person that doesn't think that is himself. And that is the heartbreaking part of the tragedy, is that Chester didn't feel that way about himself. He didn't feel good enough about himself. And that's the hard pill to swallow for me, is knowing that he felt that way and there was nothing I could do to help him. There's nothing any of his friends could do to help him, because he just it wasn't that transparent when he was here. You know, looking back, it's easy to say, well, I saw this or I saw that. And I try not to Monday morning quarterback on his life. All I do is try to reflect on the good times I had with him. And initially when he passed, it was, what did I miss? What, how could I have helped prevent this? And I think you have to come to the conclusion. The honest conclusion is probably nothing, because he never would have opened up enough for you to see it in a way that would have been an actionable situation. You know what I mean? He will tell you it's okay. He'll tell you he's doing all right. And then he'll change the subject. He'll deflect. And that's how depression works. It's not so open for a lot of people. And I would only have to assume it was very similar for Chris.
Do you think that we can change as a society, though, with kind of like the stigma of mental health? Like it's not, because like you said, the shame, I feel like that some of that comes from society, like, oh, you're going to see a psychiatrist or a counselor. Oh, you're crazy. You must be crazy. There's all that stigma that goes with it. So that's why they don't seek out help. I feel like some of that is changing too.
Oh, man, I'm going to tell you an answer that you're probably not going to like. No, I don't think it's going to change. I think society is getting worse. I think cancel culture is a huge contributor to this type of shit. I think that the internet with Instagram and Facebook portrays people. It portrays the the potential lie of what someone is rather than what people really are. You have this people, I'm living my best life. Meanwhile, they're fucking living out of their car, or they're flexing in front of somebody else's Lamborghini. I think the world is full of shit right now, especially in America. And I think that's heavily contributing to this mental abuse. And those waving the flags, in many instances, they're waving flags of attention about themselves. And some of them truly do want to change the system and change the beliefs and change people's lives. But I think a lot of it has to be done through actionable items rather than just posting on the internet. I think the internet is a very dark and evil place sometimes. And it's really teaching young people the wrong value system. You have people that are 100% okay with walking into stores and stealing shit and filming it while it's happening. That's not how I grew up. I see stuff
legal
like that.
Actually in California,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, I mean, and then you have the politicians that are making it worse. So I believe the world's in a very dark place right now, and I don't see it getting better. We can talk about depression all we want, and it may be noble in some regards, but I do not think it's going to change. I think it's going to get worse, and I think people are going to feel worse and worse about themselves with the internet and social media doing the things that they're doing, perpetuating these lies about who people are supposed to be and what the realistic expectations of the world are.
No, that's very well said. I think you kind of covered that in your book too, where you talk about, I think you and I have the same philosophy where you feel like, we live in America. There's so much opportunity here. Everybody has the potential to be successful at something, but we don't really encourage that. We encourage, like you said, like I think the Kardashians was an example you used, like, hey, look, you can be famous and make money for doing nothing. Whereas like, we really need to foster more of a culture of, hey, like you want to accomplish, you want to start a band, you want to start a podcast, a business or whatever. Like, here's the steps to do it. And then just keep working towards that and see it. And like, I'm sure, like that's one of the most exciting things for me growing this podcast. I was just looking at our first interview from a year ago and my production has gotten so much better. And I apologize before, I'm like looking at my camera. It's like 1/2 megapixel or something. It looks like shit. And it's like, just cool to see. You saw it with Club Tattoo. I'm sure you saw it with Grey Daze. Like you see this thing that you're building grow. It's a great feeling. I wish more people could feel that.
I agree with you 100%. And I think I was using the Kardashians in a context of like, look, I don't know the Kardashians, and I don't try not to judge anybody on that. They do what they do, and clearly they have a following, and they've made money doing it, and more power to them. They're not living off other people and living off other people's work. They're actually creating content that people find valuable, and more power to it. But what I'm not into is this entitlement culture where people think they're owed something. It's not. The fact that you were born in America, you have these opportunities. Granted, not everybody has the same opportunities, but even the person in the absolute worst situation in America is still 10 times better off than almost everybody in every other country. It's just the truth. It's uncomfortable. It's an uncomfortable truth, but it's the truth. And it doesn't make me racist or misogynist or a bigot or anything else, because I treat everybody the same, and I will pull everybody up that ladder. I don't care if you're gay, if you're straight, if you're black, if you're Asian. I don't give a shit. None of that stuff matters. What type of character you have and what type of person you are and what type of good you want to do in the world matters to me. So that's how I put value in humans. I'm not hiring somebody because they're black. I'm not hiring somebody because they're white. I don't care what color you are. I'm going to hire you if you're the if you're the right person for the job. You know what I mean? And things are going to be merit-based in my world, because that's reality. The government gets to do things based on, well, you should hire this person because they're a girl or because they're this or because of that. And I understand that people want a fair playing field, but the best way to fair is to make the starting point or the opportunity the same for everybody. When you try to make the result the same for everybody, it's a race to the bottom and the standards fall. And you'll find that a lot of people who have a massive aptitude or ability to do certain things will opt out. They'll say, I'm not going to compete for the bottom. I want to be the best. Mm-hmm. That's what I think.
Well, yeah. And I think, it just goes back to your original statement, how you feel like everyone has the opportunity to be, and maybe everyone has their own challenges, but I feel like it's kind of like degrading when they say like, oh, well, like women can't do this or, men can't do this. And so we need to even the playing field. I'm like, I disagree. I think people can do it. Like, you think that they can't because of this, they're too old or whatever, or different gender or whatever. Like, I think people can do whatever they put their mind to within reason. Obviously, I'm not going to be able to play for the Suns or anything, but
yeah, you have to have realistic expectations of what your capabilities really are. I also don't, I am a big supporter of human rights, but gay rights as well. When I say gay rights, I think of human rights, not gay rights, because everybody's human. Everyone deserves the same rights. It's not specific. So I'm a big proponent of this, but I do not believe in this whole transgender athlete thing where you have men who become women that are competing in women athlete arenas. I don't think that that's fair. I don't think that I think you're trying to talk the same language through an illusion, and it's just not the same. And you get caught up in the semantics of it. And it's not, I have no judgment on the man who became a woman. I don't care about that, and more power to the woman. You want to be called a woman? Great. You're a woman now. That's fine. No, I don't have any empowerment over those people. I wish them the best and want them to succeed in everything. However, it's kind of like me showing up to a karate tournament and we're all white belts and I'm competing against 5-year-olds and just throwing them across the room. It's not, you can say that, I won a karate tournament as a white belt, but the reality is you're getting caught up in the semantics and it's a bit of an illusion. And I don't think that that's fair. And that's just the way I think about it. And it's not I don't hate anybody. I don't dislike transgender or anything like that. I just think that there's, we're getting caught up in all this political correctness stuff. And I think it's detrimental to a lot of arenas, especially how much we've tried to empower women and made sure that women do have a level playing field. I think it's absolutely destroying and dismantling that, to be quite honest.
No, it's a hot topic for sure. It's an interesting debate, and it's confusing to me. Yeah,
it's people say, because I don't want to be accused of being, misogynistic or anti-gay or anti-transgender or any of these other terms that are coming up. And I put my money where my mouth is. I support my community, and I am active in the minority community here in helping people who need help from those people who are successful in the community. I actually am out there doing things, not talking about things. And I see some of the disadvantages that a lot of people have, and I want to try to help them get to a point where they have those equal opportunities. But equal results is a different conversation.
Don't you think too that, we talk so much about college and college scholarships. Everyone should go to college and we'll give you money for college. Don't you think we should put some of that money into starting businesses? Because I feel like we're lacking innovation. People complain about the billionaires like Bezos and Gates, and it's like, Well, yeah, they're kicking ass because nobody's competing with them. Like, they run the market because who's their competition? Who's Amazon's competition? I guess Walmart, but like, you know, like in an ideal world, I think we'd have more competition and more innovators.
So, oh man, you're going to get me going down a long path on this one. But,
I love it. This is a great conversation.
I'm a big Bezos, Elon Musk fan. And
yeah,
I love the fact that they're creating jobs and creating businesses and innovators. But I'll say this, I do think there's an unlevel playing field in some arenas when somebody like a Jeff Bezos gets a major tax break to open up a Amazon factory in whatever town. And it's on the basis that he's going to create jobs. Well, you know what? I create jobs too. I have 100+ people that work for me. I don't get those same tax breaks. So why would he get those tax breaks? Oh, because he's creating jobs and that's good for the economy. Time out. If that's the argument, then none of us should be paying these taxes because we all create jobs and we can all pump money through and do it a different way. But you guys are choosing winners and choosing losers. And it's really hard for a mom and pop small business to compete on a global or even national or regional level with some of these big players because the deck is stacked against you from the moment you are going in. If I have to pay for these specific permits and specific taxes and front load my insurance policies and front load in some cities, I have to front load tax base because they're afraid I'm not going to pay my taxes. And meanwhile, I'm front loading a tax base and Bezos is getting a tax-free incentive to open. So it's a negative 40% when I start my company. That's an impossible winning position or impossible position to win in. So while I applaud those guys and I'm super stoked for what they're doing and what they're creating, I think there's absolutely an unlevel playing field for a lot of other entrepreneurs. Now, more to your point, do I think that we should be investing in small businesses? Yes. Small businesses should be easier to get microloans and smaller loans without having to sell your children into slavery if you default on the loan. I mean, some of these small business loans are very scary and I've had to sign my house on several of the early loans. And that's scary. You got a business, you're going to take your house away. I mean, that's scary.
That's a gamble, man. Dang.
You know, and then further down the rat hole with your question is, I think a lot of people shouldn't be going to college that are going to college. First of all, I think some of these degrees are absolutely insane. They have no practical world application once these people graduate, and yet they're taking on 70, 80,000, 100,000 plus in debt to get these irrelevant and unusable degrees. So that's first. Secondly, I think the push to go to college, comes from that, mid 1950s and 60s parent mentality, when that seemed to be the only way you could get a level up, a leg up in the corporate world. Well, the world's changed and you don't need a college degree to do a lot of things in this world anymore. I don't have a college degree. I went to college for 5 years and was, I think, 6 credits or 8 credits away from getting my BA in philosophy and in business marketing. So I went to school to learn. I learned a lot, and then I went on to become an entrepreneur and then develop that aspect of my life. But I think a lot of people go to college because that's the pressure, A, the parents put on them, and B, what society expects of them, their peers. And I understand it. From a young point of view, you don't want to feel like a loser if you're not doing what the other people are doing around you. I think that if you had a purpose or a direction as you were going into college, it's something like, hey, what fields interest you? Or even if you just wanted to go for a year or two and find out what interests you, that's okay. But I think going for the sake of going is a miss. Mm-hmm. And I think that your time and money could be better spent in other arenas if you just think about it and are able to verbalize and have conversations with your parents and those people who influence you.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a lot, what you just said there, but going back to the big business, you're right about that. And one example that's really scary to me is banks, right? So there's only these giant banks. Remember when there used to be when we were kids, probably we even remember some mom and pop banks. Yeah. But now what I'm told is that because of all the regulations and laws, you have to have a team of lawyers if you wanted to open up a bank. So it's there is the DAC is stacked. I don't know how that's not a monopoly on some of these big businesses that are. I'm more definitely in your corner in terms of small business. I think that's where the future lies. And I think getting more young people to, whether it's maybe it is a college degree, but getting some sort of goals. I feel like so many people are lost. I think that's why our country seems so dark.
Well, we have a lot of politicians that have helped steal and rob from our country for many years. You have politicians that make it legal to steal now. You have politicians that turn the law into something that it's not supposed to be. In the early 1900s, you had these politicians like Teddy Roosevelt who'd come along and he'd want to break up these trusts and these monopolies because they were so overwhelming in small communities that they literally owned the cities. You're seeing that now, but instead of a politician with balls coming along and saying, this isn't right, you guys shouldn't have a monopoly in this area, you should be paying your taxes, or nobody should be paying their taxes. It should be one or the other. It can't be you don't have to pay taxes and you do. That is wrong. And right now you have these politicians like, Nancy Pelosi is an excellent example.
Ted Nugent doesn't like her. I tell you, I had him on the show.
I don't like her either. I think she's one of the most corrupt people in politics. Aside from Harry Reid, when he retired, and he was the most corrupt politician I had ever been introduced to. But her husband's making these gigantic stock trades, and then not just one or two. He's doing it for many, many years. We all know it. We all see it. We all see the corruption. We all see them doing exactly what the law says you're not allowed to do. He buys stock right before a bill passes. He's done it many times, by the way. This shit should be called out. He should be in jail. She should be kicked out of Congress. And everybody I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican, if you're doing this shit, you should be arrested and thrown out of Congress. And that's how it should be. But they're all buddies. They're all in on this shit together. And that's what I think is a really dark place for our country right now. Is
right.
You have
and people
that are legalizing the theft and rape of this country.
People are so loyal to their political parties that even when their party makes a mistake or does something blatantly corrupt, they will stay loyal to that party because they would rather, be a loyal Republican or Democrat than call out corruption.
Yeah, you have this cognitive dissonance, right? Where people or they're afraid to speak their mind. Fear is the other part of that. You see somebody come along, if you're a Trump fan and he says something absurd or stupid, people don't want to call it out, or I go, God, he should not have said that. That's really
I'll tell you, Kayleigh McEnany, she was the most brilliant press secretary. Somehow she would twist his words into, no, that's not what he meant. He meant that. I was like, she's really, Republican, Democrat, you have to appreciate the way she spun the shit he would say. It was impressive.
Yeah, look, I liked a lot of the economic stuff that he was doing. I thought he got it on a macro and micro scale. But some of the stuff that would come out of his mouth, I'd be like, oh man, you could have not said that. Mm-hmm. But, and then the other side, we have this guy who can't even form a sentence leading the country now. He's a complete buffoon. And you got the press going, oh, he's so great. Are you fucking kidding me? I wouldn't even give this guy an interview in my company. And you guys are talking about how great he goes. And that's politics aside. He literally can't speak. He can't form a sentence. And you see these giant teleprompters that he has to read from because he's so cognitively damaged that he literally can't get through a simple conversation without getting lost. It's fascinating to me that the cognitive dissonance that's happening.
Well, that's a funny image, though. Thinking of him working at Club Tattoo.
You'd be surprised. I think I have quite quite an impressive infrastructure in our company that you normally wouldn't think of when you think of tattoo and piercing. It's literally a real business that does real numbers. And I think a lot of what we'll just say entrepreneurs that actually look at our business model usually are pretty impressed with the way we've handled ourselves and navigated through a business arena that doesn't look kindly upon what we do as far as our sell, what we do for our business. But at the same time, we're making waves and we're changing a lot of people's minds about how you look at the tattoo and piercing industry and what a professional environment and luxury situation it really is.
Yeah, no, I was reading your book. I'm like, I've just got a couple chapters left. I'm listening to it on audio and it's so good. I'm like, oh man, this is like great stuff. Great, story, your personal story, but also like how to build a business and all these challenges that you have. I think the most interesting thing is like how many people kind of like fucked you over, like how you trusted so many people, like in bands and things. Like what was the one band you had? Waterface. What was it called?
Waterface.
Waterface. Yeah. They kicked you out of your own band. It's like, what? Like, you're doing all this work and then they basically like kicked you out of your own band. Like, it's
they
crazy.
tried. I mean, I told them I would do the tour. So how that happened was I told them I would finish the tour after I found out the singer and the bass player was trying to extort money from our label because they didn't want to get jobs. I came to practice. I said, guys, what you're doing is ass backwards. We need to work harder, not less hard. You guys are looking for the easy way out. I will do this tour. We were doing the Rock the Boat tour with Alien Ant Farm. I said, I'll do the tour. After the tour, I'm done. So find another replacement. And then I came to rehearsal 2 nights later and like, oh, we got a drummer out of LA. I'm like, okay, cool. And so that's how that went down.
And then didn't he suck or something too?
I don't know if he sucked, but he couldn't play what I was playing on the record. And I was doing a lot of interesting things on that record, which a lot of drummers may or may not be able to do. And the record label called me like 2 weeks after I left the band, like, can you please come back and play these shows? And I said, no, the way when these guys handled themselves was so, I'm going to use the word unprofessional. I was a lot younger and more aggressive at the time, but they were foolish, and I'm not doing that. And they're like, well, we'll pay you $2,500 a week, whatever it was. And I said, no, I'm not doing it. I've had my fill of this project. You've got some real dark people in this band, and I want nothing to do with it. So, and my son was being born, and I'm still really good friends with the guitar player from that band named Randy. His name is Randy Martinez. Great guy.
Yeah. So it's interesting. It's cool that you had that like out, you know what I mean? Whereas like you had the tattoo thing happen. So you didn't need the music. You kind of just, and then you did the studio stuff too, but like that was kind of the end of the music for a while until Grey Daze, of course.
Yeah. Well, I played a couple little side projects with Chester along the way throughout the years in the 2000s. You know, we did Bucket of Weenies, which was pretty fun. And we would do these club tattoo anniversary parties and stuff like that. And I played on some other records and just help people out. And I always putting my big toe in the proverbial producer, engineer waters in music. So I've never fully left music, but at the same time, it was never my bread and butter. Once Grey Daze broke up, or I should say, once I left Waterface.
Do you ever do live shows or like around Phoenix here? Like, do you ever just pop in and play drums ever like on stage?
No, that would be interesting. No, every once in a while I'll get invited to do a studio session with somebody, or I'm trying to think the last live show I did was few months ago or something, but it's rare. I do enjoy playing live, so that it's something I would like to do. But people ask us, are we going to tour with Grey Daze? And I think the bigger premise of that question is that the whole reason we did the Grey Daze material was because while Chester was alive, this is something he wanted to do. We were working on it while he was alive. So to try to replace him as a singer and go out and play live without him makes no sense to me.
Why can't you do the hologram thing like they did?
I wouldn't feel right about it. Look, more power to the people that do that. The Dio Camp and all those guys that are doing that kind of stuff. If that works for them, great. For me, it would feel a little disingenuous and a little cheesy for me to be up on stage with a hologram of Chester. A couple things too. Like, you got to remember that most people know Chester as the singer from Linkin Park, not the singer for Grey Daze. So if I did a hologram, it would look like Chester from Linkin Park rather than when he was with Grey Daze. And that we didn't really have any video of the band after we put the band back together. We didn't get to that stage. So I don't think that would really work visually anyway. And even if I did have it, I wouldn't want to do it. It's not a thing that I would want to do.
Yeah, you're just putting out this music. It's kind of like, I just had the guy from the President's United States say that's what he feels when he puts out an album. It's like a piece of art, and he's like, he's done with it, and he doesn't want to tour on everything.
I met those guys a couple times. We tattooed them on that first big album.
Did you?
Oh yeah. We tattooed a lot of people because we were right next to the big venue in Phoenix called the Electric Ballroom, Tempe rather. And
is that the one in Scottsdale? That's right. It's like literally down the street from me, like a mile away.
No, it's on Apache and Terrace in Tempe.
Okay.
It's gone now. It's now the music school for the arts or something.
Okay.
For teenagers, just like a high school. But for me, if we do something live, it's going to be in a tribute fashion where, we'll have Chester, we'll have his tracks, and we'll bring on maybe some guest singers to sing along with Chester, but not to replace Chester. And it'll only be done maybe a one-off or two-off show type thing, and it will be done to honor him. It will not be done to replace him.
Okay, well, that sounds really cool. Another thing I was going to ask you about this too, because I thought this was interesting in your book when you talk about there was a point when you were kind of like in between bands and they were trying to get you to be the drummer for Pete Loran from Trixter. Yeah. I was like, what? Like, that's a crazy connection. Like, how did that? So that didn't actually happen though, because you ended up doing the Waterface instead.
Yeah, well, I should have done the Pete Loran gig. Pete's a good friend of mine. He's a great guy. For those of you who don't know, Pete used to sing for a band called Trixter in the early 90s. And they had that big hit, Give It To Me Good or whatever. Well, this would have been 98 or 99. We had a record label executive come to one of our shows for Waterface. And he said, hey, I want to talk to you. I'm from Ezra Records, whatever. We love how you play drums. We'd love for you to play on a project we're signing. And I said, well, what is it? And they said, oh, it's Pete Loran. He used to be the singer for Trixter. And I'm going to sound like an asshole, but I'm going to be honest here. I was like, I don't want to be the drummer for a guy in Trixter because, I'm thinking 1991, that's almost 10 years ago. It's glam rock. But that's not what Pete was doing. Pete was doing really cool, progressive kind of acoustic music that was really good. And I said, look, I have a really good friend of mine named A.D. Adams. I'll get him to play drums on the record for you because it's more his speed. He's a little older than I am. And I think he'd be a good fit. And then him and Pete hit it off really well, ended up doing a record. Pete and I ended up becoming very close friends. Ezra ended up signing us, Waterface, to a deal through EMI Records. And that's Waterface's record deal that I put together. But it all came about because they wanted me to play drums for Pete. And Pete and I still talk to this day. He's a great guy. Awesome songwriter, too.
Yeah, no, I'm a Trixter fan. I've had Mark on the drummer, and I had Steve on the show, and PJ. I've had everyone except Pete. I don't know. He's kind of like
Pete's a great guy.
Yeah, I'd love to have. Is he? But he's kind of like, has he quit Trixter, or what's the story there? Like, do you know?
No, I think he still does one or two shows a year with those guys. From what I understand, I had lunch with them a few months back, and he was telling me that they were doing some festival in Georgia or something, and. So as far as I know, he's still in the band. Maybe something else has happened that I'm unaware of. But just shoot me an email when we're done, and I'll give you Pete's contact. He's a great guy.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So last question. This is kind of a big one, but I did want to get your take on this because I heard you talking about the antidepressants with Chester, and I feel like that's another thing that nobody ever talks about with antidepressants and going off of them too fast, or like there's all these side effects. And I almost think too, like, I don't know if you study it with like the mass shooters. I feel like there's a connection there too. Have you looked into that at all? Like, what is your thoughts on that?
I have not looked into anything about the mass shooters with the antidepressants. I do think that the drug industry gets a lot more of a free pass on some of this stuff than they should. I do know that Chester was on antidepressants, and I do know he stopped taking his medication just prior to him passing away. I do know that there are some of these drugs that when you go off them too quick, they make you have suicidal thoughts. So I do think that some of that was at play here when Chester's passing. I really do. I'm not blaming anybody, because at the end of the day, Chester was an adult, and Chester could have refilled his medication and done the things he was supposed to do. But I think there's a couple of things that happen psychologically when you're on these pills. You start to feel okay, and then you think, I don't need them anymore. But you're not making the correlation between I feel okay because I'm on these. Mm-hmm. The second thing is, well, I don't like the way these things make me feel. I'm going to go off of them. So then you stop taking them, and they make you spiral down faster and harder than you realize. And I think that all of those things had some they were potential reasons as to, or potential contributors to what Chester did.
Yeah.
That's what I think. There's so many factors on this when we speak about losing him. The fact that he was by himself doesn't help. Chester was a guy that did not like to be by himself. So when he was back, he was in his house by himself. I think he was off his medication, and he, of course, was battling demons as well, and sobriety and some other things. And I just think it all culminated into the worst perfect storm you could have. And that's how it ended up happening. That's my belief. And, we'll never know 100% for sure. And I don't like these conspiracy theories that are out there. It's just fucking so stupid. And, he was working on this, pedophile. No, he wasn't. That's all bullshit. Like, I get these emails, these people that want to talk about all this shit that was never happening.
I heard something about that too, that he was going to expose this pedophile ring.
None of that ever happened. They were not even, him and Chris were not even talking about anything like that. It was never in the works. That's all bullshit. None of that happened.
That's some scary stuff when people can make up those kind of rumors and then they just gain traction. That's a scary thing about the internet.
I'm like, if somebody would have known, it would have been me. I would have known about this. 100%. He would have fucking told me. There's no doubt in my mind that this would have been a conversation we had, and it never happened. And he hadn't seen Chris for months, by the way, when he passed. And that's just bullshit.
Yeah, no, but I do think the antidepressants, I think that's something that, I'm not saying that it causes suicide or mass shootings, but I feel like there's something that needs to be looked at. There are correlations. I mean, these things are dangerous, in my opinion. Like they can be, like you said, if we go off them too fast, I mean, there's definitely something there that needs to be looked at. They should not be given out like candy.
No, the psychotropic properties that many of these drugs have can be very detrimental, and it's been proven in many cases. But when you have the kind of money and backing that you have from these pharmaceutical companies, and there's no accountability for some of the things that happen, it's really a recipe for just perpetuating the problem.
Mm-hmm. No, it's scary stuff. Well, last time you were on, we promoted the New Leaf Foundation. Are you still working with them? They help battered women get out of abusive relationships.
That's right. Well, they do a lot more than that. They help people get off the streets. They help, basically they help everyone who needs help with food, housing, and domestic abuse. And my wife is on the board of Women with One Voice now, which is a subset of the New Leaf Foundation. We're a very large sponsor, main contributor for this, Women with One Voice, and they are helping domestic abuse victims and get a place to stay, a career path, help them with childcare. They do a lot of really meaningful and impactful things in our community, and I'm so proud to be part of contributing to that organization.
Awesome. Well, I'll put that in the show notes along with a link for Grey Daze. People can get the album on, you said July 1st, I believe?
Yeah, July 1st.
Okay. They can download it for free, so then they should donate that $15 to the New Leaf Foundation.
There you go.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Okay. Thanks so much, Sean. It's a great conversation.
Chuck, have an awesome day. Great interview.
All right. You too. All right. See you later.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. Grey Daze. Check out the new album. It's called The Phoenix. It's going to be out July 1st, 2022. So it may already be out depending on when you're listening to this. By now, you should know the drill. Following the guest and myself on social media, sharing, liking, commenting, all that helps support us. And I'm very incredibly thankful for all the support that I've received. Coming up on 3 years of doing this podcast, and I'm averaging over 10,000 downloads a month between YouTube and the audio. So pretty crazy when I think about it. I don't know how many of that is bots or whatever, but I want to thank you all for that if you're still listening. And I just want to continue to grow this show. And we only grow with your support. So if you enjoy the show, please show your support with, again, liking, sharing, commenting, or write a review or a rating. That would really help me out. Thank you so much for sticking with us. Have a great rest of your day, and remember to shoot for the moon.